I'm not sure. Obviously, Harrison being involved in the watch market, whether there's any watches that have risen in value that much from initial release. I'd be quite intrigued.
Yeah. I think there definitely has. I think it's funny, the watch and the art industry is very, very kind of different. Well, they're quite similar in that way. I suppose the watch industry, you never see it coming. Like there's trends that you just never see. It's a bit like Banksy. Nobody saw that coming. And I have friends. I have friends and colleagues that I work with that, back in the day, they could buy a Patek Philippe for £10,000. And now because that Patek Philippe's discontinued, it's up at 70, 80, 90, £100,000. And
wow.
it's wild.
Wow.
Or you get watch brands, and sometimes we saw this with Omega. We actually stock them. They released a version called the CK. I can't remember the numbers after that, but it was something called like the CK. And they didn't tell anyone about the release, but then within 6 months, they discontinued it. So it wasn't a limited edition, but because it was produced over COVID, there was very few numbers of it. So all of a sudden, like 2 years after this watch got discontinued, everyone wants that watch again. And it's like this bizarre thing that nobody can see those trends coming, and it's unforeseen circumstances. And then also you get people that like collaborate with certain, James Bond is a big one. Omega collaborate with James Bond. So the people resonate with that, and they want those James Bond iterations, and they're limited, and the more limited they are, the more expensive they are. I think a brand that I've definitely seen huge uptake in, and I think it's just because of the limited numbers they produced. I think they produce about 30 to 40,000 watches a year worldwide, which is not a lot.
Wow. It's not very many. Yeah.
Not very many, especially when you look at like Rolex, which is a fantastic brand. They release like 1.2 million watches a year. So when you compare, do you know what I mean? When you compare them, you're like
a fraction of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Rarity is extremely valuable. So I've seen Vacheron Constantin just take it like rocket, and the popularity and demand for them. Have you heard of the Holy Trinity?
I'm not familiar. Not in a watch sense.
So the Holy Trinity is like, I'm such a watch nerd. You've opened a can of worms here.
No, I have an interest in it. The collecting aspect, I find it fascinating. The whiskey as well. I'm interested in these markets.
Yeah. So the Holy Trinity is like Vacheron Constantin, Patek Philippe, and AP. So the watch enthusiasts call these brands the Holy Trinity of watches. They're the three brands that are the creme de la creme, the pinnacle of everything. And to have a brand like Vacheron that produces so few watches is definitely a attraction to people, especially business people that want to be a bit more understated. I feel like when you go down to London, the crime around specifically Rolex and Patek is so high that they're very nervous about going for those watches now. So what you see is they say, well, Vacheron is unbelievable quality, the oldest watch brand in continuous production. It's part of the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
Let's go for that. And then hopefully your wrist won't get sort of ripped off.
I mean, it's a shame that people have to think about it, but it's very true. I mean, Rolex, you'd quite easily recognize a valuable Rolex. Whereas I think I've seen a couple of these Vacheron Constantins, the sort of slim dress watches that could easily get confused with something else. And you'd probably have to be a bit in the know to realize sort of whether it has any value to it. But I'm surprised Rolex isn't up there in the, perhaps maybe they sell too many watches. Perhaps they're slightly too accessible to be in that Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
It sounds like supply and demand really sort of drive that market.
Exactly. It's supply and demand totally. I suppose it's like art, if Banksy made too many paintings, or, Ferrari made too many cars, all of a sudden you see a dip. And I think that's what makes these special editions special. Rolex had a period where they were using Zenith. That you've totally opened up a can of worms here, by the way. I'm such a nerd. But
like I said, Harrison, I'm interested in this as well.
So Rolex had a period that they were using Zenith's movements. So Zenith's another luxury watch brand, and Rolex were using these movements in their Daytona, and they changed that quite quickly. So as a result, there's quite a limited number of those Zenith Rolex Daytonas. So all of a sudden
Right.
everyone wants that one now because there's something slightly different, or
Yeah.
they want, you know, an Arabic numeral Rolex because it's a lot more rare than a non-Arabic numeral.